In the last video, we walked through the first 3 phases of financial freedom. The first quiet exhale at $3,000, the recovery of dignity at $20,000, the slow construction of financial character somewhere around $50,000. 3 phases. None of them looked like wealth from the outside. All of them changed everything from the inside. But there's something that happens next, somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000, that almost nobody describes correctly. Because what changes in this phase isn't your balance, it's the shape of your life. You are about to walk through the door that most people never realize is there. If this kind of conversation is the kind you want more of, subscribe. That's the only ask. Let's keep going. Phase 4 arrives somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000 of total net worth. The exact number depends on your cost of living, your debts, the architecture of your life. But what makes this phase significant isn't the number. It's that, for the first time, money begins to bend the shape of your decisions. It's hard to describe Phase 4 to someone who hasn't been there. Imagine your entire adult life. You've been walking through a hallway. One direction, forward. The walls are close. You've gotten used to it. You don't even think of it as a hallway anymore. It's just life. Then one day, you notice the hallway has a door. And beyond that door, the hallway opens up into something that isn't a hallway at all. That's Phase 4. The moment you realize the structure of your life is not fixed, that the job you hate is not the only job, that the city you live in is not the only city, that the version of your life you've been performing is not the only version available. Economists have a name for what you've just discovered. They call it real optionality. The idea, developed by economist Stewart Myers, is that options have value independent of whether they're ever exercised. Just having an option changes how you negotiate, how you risk, how you sleep. And here's where the data does something almost unbelievable. In its 2024 survey of household economics and decision-making, the Federal Reserve found that Americans with 3 to 6 months of emergency savings combined with modest retirement balances, roughly $50,000 to $200,000 total, reported dramatically higher life satisfaction than people with no savings, even when their incomes were comparable. The dollar amount that produced the biggest jump in self-reported well-being wasn't $1 million. It was the quiet move from desperate to stable, and the move from stable to optional. Optional is the key word. Optional is the magic. When work is optional, work becomes something else entirely. When you stay because you choose to, not because you have to, the same job, the same boss, the same office, the texture is different. Some days you actually like it, because the days you don't like it don't feel like prison. They feel like Tuesday. And Tuesday will end. And this changes their relationships with everyone, with their employer, with their friends, with their family. Because relationships built on need are almost always more brittle than relationships built on choice. The person who needs you eventually resents you. The person who chooses you eventually grows with you. There's a moment that happens to many people in Phase 4 that they almost never tell anyone about. They look at their boss or their industry and they think, for the first time, I could leave. Not I will leave. Not I should leave. Just I could. And the I could doesn't make them quit. Usually they don't quit at all. But the I could makes them sit differently in meetings, speak differently in negotiations, push back on requests that are unreasonable, set boundaries that 6 months earlier they wouldn't have dared to set. Their work, paradoxically, often gets better, because work performed from freedom is almost always better than work performed from fear. But Phase 4 also brings something more dangerous than the previous phases, because this is where lifestyle inflation begins to whisper. And the people who survive Phase 4 are the ones who hear it whispering and refuse to listen. Lifestyle inflation works like this. Your income rises, a raise comes through, a bonus arrives, and almost immediately the inputs start coming. The newer car, the bigger apartment, the better restaurant. None of it feels like a mistake. It all feels earned. But here's what the data shows. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reported that the average American personal savings rate in February 2025 was just 4.6%. That's not because Americans don't earn enough. It's because Americans at every income level tend to spend nearly all of what comes in. A person earning $100,000 often saves the same percentage as a person earning $30,000. The lifestyle grows to fill the income. Behavioral economists call this the hedonic treadmill. Every upgrade in lifestyle quickly becomes the new normal. The new car, after 6 months, just feels like the car. The bigger apartment, after a year, just feels like the apartment. The dopamine fades. The bill never does. You're paying every month for a happiness that lasted weeks. People who clear Phase 4 understand this intuitively. They know their financial life is a leak or keep contest, and that lifestyle inflation is the leak. Every recurring expense, housing, car, subscriptions, memberships, is a slow drain on optionality. Every fixed cost shrinks the size of the door they could walk through if they needed to. The financial writer Morgan Housel summarized this whole phase in one line. He wrote that wealth is the income you don't spend, not the cars you own, not the houses you live in. The wealth is the part you didn't consume. Wealth is invisible by definition. In Phase 4, you start to develop eyes that can see this kind of wealth in other people. The colleague you used to envy because he drives the nice car, you start to suspect correctly that he's one paycheck away from collapse. The neighbor with the boat, you start to suspect correctly that the lifestyle is leveraged and the stress is enormous. Meanwhile, the quiet woman at the office who drives a paid-off Honda and packs her own lunch, you start to suspect correctly that she has a portfolio that would surprise you. The world starts to reveal itself. Status reveals itself as theater. Theater reveals itself as expensive. Expense reveals itself as the opposite of wealth. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. The pressure to upgrade loses its grip. The social media performance of wealth starts to look like what it actually is, a thinly disguised, financially ruinous game that almost no one wins. You step out of it, quietly, without announcement. You stop playing. The richest people on social media are usually performing wealth. The richest people in real life are usually hiding it. The distance between those two truths is the distance between looking free and being free. If anything in this video has landed so far, hit the like button. It helps this kind of conversation reach the people who need it. Let's keep going. Because the next phase is where something genuinely strange happens. Phase 5 is the phase that cannot be measured in dollars, because what changes here is the temperature of your relationship with the future. For most of your adult life, the future has been an enemy. It's been the thing you're trying to outrun. The place where the bill comes due, where the body fails, where the job disappears, where the kid needs college, where the parent gets sick, where the savings run out. The future has been the dark room you've been afraid to walk into. So you don't walk in, you stay in the present. This is the architecture of almost every working American adult. The future is not a friend. The future is a debt collector. Phase 5 is the slow, almost imperceptible moment when the future starts feeling neutral, and then, eventually, a little bit friendly. The dollar amount that produces this varies, but it usually clusters somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 of net worth. What matters isn't the number. What matters is the moment you run the rough math on the back of a napkin, your savings, your retirement accounts, your projected contributions, the historical 7% real return, and you realize for the first time that the math actually works. Not perfectly, not luxuriously, but it works. Let me give you an example. Suppose you're 40 years old with $250,000 in a low-cost, diversified portfolio. You keep contributing $600 a month. The market does what it has done for the last 100 years and averages around 7% after inflation. By the time you're 67, Your portfolio is somewhere in the range of $1.8 to $2 million in today's purchasing power. You didn't earn extra. You didn't get a big raise. You didn't start a business. You just kept going. This is the math that the financial industry has every incentive to overcomplicate. Because if Americans understood that $250,000 at 40, plus consistent contributions, plus the patience to leave it alone for 25 years, produces seven-figure wealth at retirement, they wouldn't need most of the products being sold to them. The truth is almost embarrassingly simple. The market compounds. You wait. The math runs. The future arrives. And what happens to your psychology when you first understand this in your bones, when you first feel that you are not going to die in poverty, that your retirement is, in some real sense, already underway, is the slow, deep, almost holy lowering of background fear. People in Phase 5 sleep differently. They breathe differently. They argue less with their partners about money. They snap less at their kids. They don't doom scroll the financial news as obsessively. They become, in some quiet way, less reactive humans. Researchers call this perceived financial security. And here's the surprising part. Perceived financial security correlates with life satisfaction, sleep quality, marital stability, and physical health far more strongly than actual income does. Two people earning the same amount can have wildly different mental health outcomes based entirely on whether they feel secure about their financial future. The body believes what the mind tells it, and the mind, in Phase 5, has finally received some good news. The reduction of fear in this phase is not just emotional, it compounds across every other part of life. People in Phase 5 make better career decisions because they're no longer choosing jobs from panic. Better health decisions because they can afford preventive care. Better investment decisions because reduced fear makes them less likely to panic sell during downturns. This is what behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman called the slow brain coming online. When fear dominates, you operate from your fast brain, the reactive, threat-detecting brain that evolved on the savannah. When fear recedes, the slow brain, deliberate, patient, long-term, can finally do its job. Phase 5 is where you finally get to use the full version of your own mind. But Phase 5 also brings a strange kind of grief. Many people, when they reach this phase, look back at their 20s and 30s and feel a quiet ache. They see how much of their decision-making was driven by fear they didn't even know was fear. Jobs they took because they were scared. Relationships they stayed in because they were scared. Risks they didn't take because they were scared. And they realize fear was always the most expensive thing they were paying for. Not rent, not loans, fear. When fear leaves, you don't just feel relief. You feel briefly mourning. For the version of you who lived under it for so long, for the years you can't get back. But the mourning passes. And what replaces it is something deeper than relief. It's the experience of being, for perhaps the first time in your adult life, fully present in your own life. Not bracing, not flinching, not calculating worst-case scenarios during dinner with people you love. Just present. And presence, it turns out, is a form of wealth that no amount of income, in the absence of security, can ever buy. For most of your life, the future has been the thing you're afraid of. The moment it stops being the enemy is the moment you become free. So let's name where you are right now. If you've been with me through phases 1, 2, and 3 in the last video, and you've now walked through 4 and 5, you may already recognize yourself in one of them. Maybe phase 4, where the door of optionality just cracked open. Maybe phase 5, where the future is starting to feel less like an enemy. Wherever you are, here's what nobody will tell you. The hardest psychological work is already behind you. From no margin to some margin. From desperation to dignity. From dignity to optionality. From optionality to a future that no longer scares you. These 4 shifts are the deep ones. The expensive ones. The ones almost no one explains because almost no one walks through them consciously. Most people stumble through them and reach phase 5 without realizing they crossed a series of invisible doors. And then they look around and wonder why they feel different and don't know how to name it. But you'll know, because you've just been told what to look for. In the next video, we go to the place where almost no one in your life will ever go with you. Phase 6 is where the math starts behaving like a magic trick, where your portfolio starts contributing more to its own growth than you do, where the worker you hired in phase 3 has grown into something that pays you while you sleep. And then phase 7, the rarest one, where money disappears as a category of concern entirely. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe. The next one is already on the way. Tell me, in the comments, which phase you're in right now. Not your number, not your salary, just the phase, the way it feels. You're closer than you've been told. I'll see you in the next one.